Who are the citizens of civilization? The citizens, a community based on the morals of balance, equality, fair opportunity, direct democracy, education, and violence, is failing to find a better way. It's a community for those who share in its values, similar to what the religious communities enjoy, but for those who believe in science. People with extreme viewpoints often need to gather others to spread their ideas, and forming groups helps insulate the community from opposing views. This grouping allows these believers to collectively gather a lot of power behind their ideas, regardless of their foundation in reality. People who are scientifically minded often view these issues as obvious and have other concerns in their lives to deal with. Therefore, it can be hard to enumerate those without an extreme position or gather support from a community without unity. The citizens of civilization philosophy starts with the individual holding the civilized values, balanced through existential awareness. For one's actions to have the best chance at success, one will need to understand the situation from as many perspectives as possible.
If you really want to calculate your carbon footprint, you have to look at the whole picture. Think about the banana company's corporate offices, which create their own emissions, like the coffee they supply to their employees. Coffee that required water and energy to grow and ship. And that shipping company provided uniforms for their drivers, uniforms that required zippers. Zippers made out of metals which needed to be mined from the earth. And during lunch at the zipper mine, what did they serve? Bananas.
Equality. All humans are equal, regardless of size, shape, color, location, or belief.
Until recently, the vast majority of the world population worked on farms, and the total production of the world's economy was mostly the total agricultural output. And this output was limited by the fixed size of the land. The total output of the economy did not change a lot year by year. The size of the pie was fixed. The world was a zero-sum game. In such a stagnating world, the only way to get better off is if someone else gets worse off. If you take a bigger piece of the pie, someone else's gets smaller. If you want more food, then conquering, plundering, and stealing are great strategies. Your neighbor's loss is your gain. This was the state of things for thousands of years. Societies invaded each other constantly to get more pie. The change from stagnation to economic growth really was the most drastic shift in human history. How was this possible? At the very core of this massive transformation stand new ideas that lead to innovation. Innovation has many different definitions, but in the context of this video, we mean better solutions to existing problems and solutions to problems we didn't know we had. The new positive-sum world has existed for 0.1% of human history, and we have yet to get used to it. It has a consequence that feels really unintuitive. In a positive-sum world, it's in your personal, selfish best interest that every human on planet Earth is well off. It's good for you if people in obscure parts of countries you've never heard of are prospering. There is a genuine, selfish argument for making the world a better place. In a positive-sum world, the more people are well off, the better your own life is. This is because of the nature of innovation. Work of a poor farmer in a developing nation is not useful to you, but if he becomes better off, his children might spend their time in university developing things that are useful to you. Instead of having some hotspots of innovation in the developed world, we would have many hotspots all over the world. The research output of humanity would be many times what it is right now. This is the core of the argument. The more people want the same thing that you want, the more likely you are to get it. That is what it means to live in a positive-sum world. You don't gain more pie if poor places stay poor. Instead, you get more pie if poor places get richer, contribute ideas, and grow the global pie. Do you like being alive? A few billion people paying for medical research could literally save your life. It's in your interest for people around the world to become better off. The faster we get to this version of the world, the better for you personally. No matter what your motivation is, working on a better world is a very good thing to do. For others, and for you.
A community for those who share in its values, similar to what the religious communities enjoy, but for those who believe in science.
Everybody feels lonely from time to time. When we have no one to sit next to at lunch, when we move to a new city, or when nobody has time for us at the weekend. But over the last few decades, this occasional feeling has become chronic for millions. In the UK, 60% of 18 to 34-year-olds say they often feel lonely. In the US, 46% of the entire population feel lonely regularly. We are living in the most connected time in human history, and yet an unprecedented number of us feel isolated. Being lonely and being alone are not the same thing. You can be filled with bliss by yourself and hate every second surrounded by friends. Loneliness is a purely subjective, individual experience. If you feel lonely, you are lonely. Money, fame, power, beauty, social skills, a great personality, nothing can protect you against loneliness because it's part of your biology. You were born into groups of 50 to 150 people, which you usually stayed with for the rest of your life. Getting enough calories, staying safe and warm, or caring for offspring was practically impossible alone. Being together meant survival. Being alone meant death. So it was crucial that you got along with others. For your ancestors, the most dangerous threat to survival was not being eaten by a lion, but not getting the social vibe of your group and being excluded. To avoid that, your body came up with social pain. Pain of this kind is an evolutionary adaptation to rejection. A sort of early warning system to make sure you stop behavior that would isolate you. Today, we move vast distances for new jobs, love and education, and leave our social net behind. We meet fewer people in person, and we meet them less often than in the past. We become busy with work, university, romance, kids, and Netflix. There's just not enough time. The most convenient and easy thing to sacrifice is time with friends. Until you wake up one day and realize that you feel isolated. That you yearn for close relationships. Large-scale studies have shown that the stress that comes from chronic loneliness is among the most unhealthy things we can experience as humans. It makes you age quicker. It makes cancer deadlier, Alzheimer's advance faster, your immune system's weaker. Loneliness is twice as deadly as obesity and as deadly as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. When loneliness becomes chronic, your brain goes into self-preservation mode. It starts to see danger and hostility everywhere. Because of this perceived hostile world, you can become more self-centered to protect yourself, which can make you appear more cold, unfriendly, and socially awkward than you really are. You begin to avoid social interaction, which leads to more feelings of isolation. This cycle becomes more severe and harder to escape each time. Loneliness makes you sit far away from others in class, not answer the phone when friends call, decline invitations until the invitations stop. Each and every one of us has a story about ourselves, and if your story becomes that people exclude you, others pick up on that. And so the outside world can become the way you feel about it. First thing you can do to escape it is to accept that loneliness is a totally normal feeling and nothing to be ashamed of. Literally everybody feels lonely at some point in their life. It's a universal human experience. Are you trying to avoid being hurt and not risking opening up? And if so, can you try to give others the benefit of the doubt? Can you just assume that they're not against you? Can you risk being open and vulnerable again? And lastly, your behavior. Are you avoiding opportunities to be around others? Are you looking for excuses to decline invitations? Or are you pushing others away preemptively to protect yourself? Are you acting as if you're getting attacked? Are you really looking for new connections, or have you become complacent with your situation? If you feel unable to solve your situation by yourself, please try to reach out and get professional help. It's not a sign of weakness, but of courage. However we look at loneliness, as a purely individual problem that needs solving to create more personal happiness, or as a public health crisis, it is something that deserves more attention. Humans have built a world that's nothing short of amazing, and yet none of the shiny things we've made is able to satisfy or substitute our fundamental biological need for connection. Most animals get what they need from their physical surroundings. We get what we need from each other. And we need to build our artificial human world based on that.
Philosophy continues into the Asherman government with the policy set by citizens' vote. Input and belief that everyone should have a say transitions to direct democracy in the form of electronic voting, allowing for month-long referendums and voting accountability. This is the basis for the morality of the governing body.
Our platform is simple. We want to give the public the ability to directly vote on legislation. By voting directly, we can circumvent wealthy special interests and force government to act in our collective interest. Such a form of democracy would have been impractical in the days of the Founding Fathers, or even 10 years ago. Direct voting on a regular basis was simply too cumbersome, so we settled for electing representatives to act for us, but now have the technology to do better. Over the last 15 years, the internet has transformed almost every aspect of our lives. We bank on the internet. We buy goods on the internet. Why don't we also vote on the internet? Some people don't have time or want to be that involved in the political process. So each user may choose a single delegate, and the delegate will inherit the user's vote for any bill he does not vote on. This allows each user to participate at their own comfort level. For the first time in the history of mankind, we possess the technology to create a true democracy. Will you join the revolution?
Here's the interesting thing that happens when you're president. So you start off, you're a community organizer and you're struggling to try to get people to recognize each other's common interests, and you're trying to get some project done in a small community, and you start thinking, okay, you know what, this alderman's a knucklehead, and they're resistant to doing the right thing, and so I need to get more knowledge, more power, more influence so that I can really have an impact. And so you go to the state legislature and you look around and you say, well, these jamokes, not all of them, but I'm just saying, you start getting that sense of, this is just like dealing with the alderman. Then you go to the U.S. Senate and you're looking around and you're like, oh man. And then when you're president, you're sitting in these international meetings and it's like the G20 and you got all these world leaders and it's the same people. Nature of human dynamics does not change from level to level. Which is why I've been quoted saying this sometimes, like most of what you need to learn, you can actually just read Dr. Seuss, right? Because, there's the story of the Sneetches and like people, the Sneetches have, the ones with stars think that they're better than the ones who don't have stars and they got an attitude. And then, there's the Lorax who's trying to tell people, hey, don't cut down the trees because then the fish are going to die, right? I mean, it's all pretty much there. The way power works at every level, at the United Nations or in your neighborhood, is do you have a community that stands behind what you stand for? And if you do, you'll have more power. And if you don't, you won't.